At dinner, I knew something felt off the moment my husband lifted his glass and couldn't look at me. His smile looked forced, and his hands wouldn't stay still. 7 minutes later, a woman walked into the restaurant with a young boy beside her, and my whole life changed in front of everyone. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Bryn Hale. For 11 years, I trusted my husband, Cale Mercer, with everything I had. I never imagined he could lie to me so easily. That night was meant to celebrate his big promotion. He picked an expensive steakhouse in Chicago and invited his sister, Veda, to join us. At first, I tried to enjoy the evening, but little things started bothering me. Cale kept checking the entrance like he was waiting for someone. His phone stayed upside down near his plate the whole time. Every time I asked a question, he answered too quickly and changed the subject. Veda barely spoke at all. She kept staring at her drink and avoiding eye contact with me. The strange feeling in my chest kept growing stronger. I remember trying to convince myself I was overthinking. Then the restaurant doors opened, and a tall woman walked directly toward our table holding a little boy's hand tightly. She stopped beside Cale and looked at him with tears in her eyes. The second I saw his face turn pale, I knew my marriage was already over before she even spoke. The woman stood beside our table for a few seconds before speaking. Her hand was shaking while the little boy stayed close to her side. She looked directly at Cale and asked him how long he planned to ignore them like they were strangers. Her voice cracked when she said it, and suddenly the entire restaurant became quiet. I looked at my husband, waiting for him to deny whatever was happening, but he couldn't even form a sentence. His mouth opened and closed while panic spread across his face. I had never seen him look afraid before. That was the moment my stomach dropped. The woman introduced herself as Nyla Rowan. Then she gently placed her hand on the boy's shoulder and said his name was Ellis. She explained that Cale was his father. At first, my brain refused to understand what I was hearing. I kept staring at the child, trying to count the years in my head. Then Nyla quietly said Ellis had just turned 8 a few weeks earlier. 8 years. I had been married to Cale for 11. The numbers hit me harder than anything else. It meant he had been living a double life almost the entire time we were together. Every anniversary, every family trip, every promise he made suddenly felt fake. People at nearby tables started whispering. Some openly stared at me with pity. I wanted to disappear. My chest felt tight, and my hands went numb under the table. Then things became even worse. I turned toward Veda, hoping she looked as shocked as I felt, but instead she started crying. She admitted she already knew about Nyla and the child. She said she wanted to tell me before but never had the courage. Hearing that hurt more than Cale's silence. I realized I had been the only person living in the dark. I walked out of the restaurant feeling like I couldn't breathe. Cold air hit my face, but it didn't calm me down. Cale followed behind me, calling my name over and over while people near the entrance stared at us. The second he reached me, he grabbed my arm and told me not to make a scene. That only made me angrier. I pulled away and asked him how long he planned to lie to me. Instead of giving me a real answer, he kept saying things like, "It's complicated," and "Please just listen first." I couldn't believe he still thought excuses would help him. Then Nyla came outside with the little boy waiting near the car. She looked exhausted, like she had carried this secret for years. At first, I thought nothing else could shock me after what happened inside, but I was wrong. Nyla quietly explained that Cale had been paying for the apartment where she lived. I didn't understand why she was telling me until she mentioned the money came from our shared savings account. My heart nearly stopped. That account wasn't ordinary savings. Most of the money inside came from my mother after she passed away. Before she died, she wanted me to have security and peace in my future. I remembered sitting beside her hospital bed while she told me to protect myself no matter what happened in life. And Cale stole from it. Not for bills. Not for emergencies. He used my mother's money to build another life behind my back. I looked at him, hoping somehow this part wasn't true, but he couldn't deny it. His silence said enough. In that moment, something inside me changed completely. Earlier, I felt hurt and embarrassed. Now, all I felt was fury. The man I defended for years had betrayed me in the cruelest way possible, and suddenly I stopped seeing him as my husband at all. The next morning, my phone started ringing before I even got out of bed. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Cale standing frozen beside that table while everyone stared at me. I thought maybe his family would call to apologize or at least ask if I was okay. Instead, every conversation became another disappointment. The first call came from his mother, Lena. She spoke calmly like nothing serious had happened. She told me marriages go through difficult moments and said men sometimes make bad choices when they feel pressure. I sat there speechless while she defended her son like cheating for years was some small mistake. Then she asked me not to embarrass the family by talking about it publicly. I hung up immediately. A few minutes later, Veda called crying. She claimed she cared about me, but her real concern quickly became obvious. She kept begging me not to destroy Cale's future because his promotion at work was important. Not once did she mention the pain he caused me. Not once did she ask how I felt after learning my entire marriage was built on lies. By afternoon, more relatives started texting me. Every message sounded the same. They wanted peace, silence, and protection for Cale. It felt like I was expected to carry the humiliation quietly while he avoided consequences. Later that evening, I discovered something that hurt even more. While searching online, I found old photos from a birthday party at a bowling center. In the background stood Lena, Veda, and two of Cale's cousins smiling beside Nyla's son. There were decorations showing different years, which meant this had been happening for a long time. They all knew. I stared at those pictures for almost an hour, realizing I had never truly belonged in that family. To them, I was only the dependable wife who helped pay the mortgage and made Cale's life easier while they protected his secrets behind my back. I couldn't sleep after everything that happened. My mind kept replaying every moment from the restaurant, every lie Cale had told me over the years, and every strange feeling I ignored because I trusted him. Around 3 a.m, I gave up trying to rest and walked into the home office. I opened our filing cabinet and started going through old bank statements and tax folders. At first, I didn't even know what I was searching for. I just needed answers. The more papers I checked, the worse things became. I noticed several large transfers from our savings account that I didn't remember approving. That alone made me nervous, so I pulled out the signed documents attached to the transactions. The signatures looked similar to mine at first glance, but after staring closely, I realized they weren't written naturally. Cale had copied my handwriting. My hand started shaking. There were 2 separate forms with fake signatures used to move money without my permission. I felt sick knowing someone I shared a bed with could betray me so easily. Then I found another folder hidden inside one of his desk drawers. Inside were receipts from hotels, expensive dinners, doctor appointments, and tuition payments connected to Ellis. There were even printed emails discussing school schedules and monthly expenses. Cale hadn't just cheated. He built another full life while coming home to me every night pretending everything was normal. Each paper felt heavier than the last. I cried for a while, but eventually the tears stopped. Something colder replaced them. I realized emotions wouldn't protect me anymore. Instead of calling Cale or creating another argument, I carefully made copies of every document. I scanned files onto a flash drive and stored the originals exactly where I found them so he wouldn't suspect anything. The next morning, before Cale even woke up, I searched for a divorce attorney and scheduled a meeting with a lawyer named Tallis Reed. For the first time since the dinner, I finally felt slightly in control again. After a few days, Cale completely changed his behavior. Suddenly, he acted like the husband I used to beg him to be years earlier. Every morning, flowers appeared on the kitchen counter before I woke up. He cleaned the house without being asked and cooked meals he knew I loved. One night, He even made the lemon pasta I used to request on birthdays because he remembered it reminded me of my mother. If I didn't know the truth already, I probably would have believed he cared. But now every kind gesture felt fake. I started noticing how carefully he watched my reactions, almost like he was studying me. He didn't seem heartbroken because he hurt me. He seemed terrified of losing control over his comfortable life. He cried constantly too. Sometimes I would walk into the living room and find him sitting there with red eyes pretending he couldn't live without me. He kept saying Nyla was meaningless and insisted their relationship was never serious. Hearing him talk about the mother of his child that way disgusted me even more. If he could disrespect her so easily after years together, then none of his promises to me ever meant anything either. I stayed quiet most of the time and listened. Then one evening, while we were sitting at the dining table, he made the mistake that destroyed the last small piece of love I still carried for him. He looked at me and said, "Bryn, be realistic. Starting over at your age won't be easy. You should think carefully before throwing everything away." The words hit harder than all his lies. It wasn't concern. It was manipulation. He honestly believed I was too weak, too dependent, or too old to leave him behind. In his mind, fear would keep me trapped. Something inside me shut down after that conversation. I stopped crying completely. I stopped asking questions. Even my anger became calmer. While Cale thought he was saving our marriage, I quietly began preparing for the end of it instead. Instead of packing my bags and leaving right away, I decided to stay a little longer. Not because I forgave Cale, but because I needed time. I wanted to understand how far his lies really went before making my next move. So I played along. I sat across from him during dinner and acted calmer than I felt. I nodded while he apologized and pretended to believe him when he promised everything would change. Sometimes he would reach for my hand, and I forced myself not to pull away. The entire time, he looked relieved, like he truly believed he was fixing things. What he didn't know was that I had already chosen to leave him. Behind the scenes, I stayed in close contact with Tallis Reed. Every few days, I brought him new documents or records I found inside the house. Together, we went through bank transfers, account statements, and hidden expenses one by one. The deeper we looked, the uglier the truth became. Cale hadn't only stolen from me. He had been moving money through a fake consulting business for years. On paper, it looked like extra freelance income, but Tallis explained that several payments didn't match any real work. Some money disappeared completely without proper records attached to it. One afternoon, Tallis leaned back in his chair and asked if I understood what that meant. Cale wasn't just dishonest in our marriage. He had likely committed tax fraud too. Hearing those words shocked me, but it also changed something inside me. For weeks, I felt like the powerless one while Cale controlled every situation around him. Suddenly, the balance shifted. The man who lied so confidently had become careless. He thought nobody would ever question him because he believed he was smarter than everyone else. Meanwhile, I kept acting normal at home. I smiled when Ned answered politely, and watched him slowly relax again. Cale thought he was rebuilding my trust. In reality, I was quietly collecting everything Ned to tear apart the perfect image he spent years protecting. About a month later, Cale's company held a large celebration for his promotion at an upscale hotel downtown. The ballroom was packed with executives, business partners, co-workers, and their spouses. Everyone dressed elegantly, laughing and drinking while soft music played in the background. Cale looked happier than he had in weeks. He walked around shaking hands, smiling for photos, and acting like his life was perfect again. Watching him pretend so easily almost impressed me. Before the event, he asked if I would stand beside him during the speech because it would look strong if we appeared united. I agreed without hesitation. He thought my calm attitude meant I had finally moved on from everything. He had no idea what was coming. That night, I wore a black dress he once bought me for an anniversary trip years earlier. People complimented us all evening, saying we looked like the perfect couple. Every comment felt strange knowing the truth sitting underneath it all. Later, Cale stepped onto the stage holding a champagne glass while the room quieted down. He thanked his company for believing in him and talked about hard work, dedication, and sacrifice. Then he started speaking about family. I stood near the back listening while he described himself as a loyal husband surrounded by people who supported him through every challenge. Several guests smiled at me while he spoke, completely unaware of the lies behind every word. Then Cale surprised me by calling me onto the stage. He stretched his hand toward me confidently, expecting a loving speech that would complete the image he built for everyone there. The ballroom applauded as I walked toward him slowly. When he handed me the microphone, he leaned close and whispered, "Just keep it positive." I looked directly into his eyes for a second before turning toward the crowd. The room became completely silent. Then I calmly asked him if he also wanted me to talk about the other woman and child he had hidden for nearly a decade. The smile disappeared from his face instantly for a few seconds after I spoke. Nobody moved. The entire ballroom felt frozen. You could hear glasses clink softly somewhere near the back of the room, but other than that, there was complete silence. Cale stood beside me staring like he couldn't believe what was happening. His confident expression disappeared so fast it almost shocked me. Earlier that evening, he walked around acting untouchable. Now he looked terrified. I kept my voice calm while I spoke into the microphone. I told the room that the man standing beside me had spent years lying to everyone closest to him. I explained that he secretly had another child during our marriage and used money that belonged to my late mother to support that hidden life. People began whispering immediately. Several executives near the front exchanged uncomfortable looks while Cale tried interrupting me, but I stepped away before he could grab the microphone back. He kept saying we should discuss things privately, but nobody seemed interested in protecting him anymore. That was when Tallis entered the situation. He had been waiting quietly near the ballroom entrance the entire evening. Once the room erupted into confusion, he walked forward carrying a folder filled with copied financial records. Calmly and professionally, he handed documents to a few senior people from Cale's company. I watched their expressions change page by page. One older executive frowned deeply while reading. Another pulled Cale aside asking sharp questions he clearly couldn't answer. The polished image he spent years building started collapsing right in front of everyone. Then I heard shouting. Lena pushed through the crowd toward me looking furious. She screamed that I was selfish and cruel for humiliating her son publicly. Her voice echoed across the ballroom while guests turned to stare. Before she reached me, hotel security stepped in and blocked her path. Cale looked completely overwhelmed. Sweat covered his face while people whispered around him from every direction. For years, I had been the one crying, apologizing, and trying to fix problems he created. That night, for the first time, I watched him completely lose control instead. After that night, everything in Cale's life started falling apart faster than he expected. The company didn't ignore what was shown at the event. Within a few days, they opened a full internal investigation into his behavior and finances. People who used to congratulate him now avoided even making eye contact. His promotion, which he had proudly celebrated, was taken away almost immediately. Meetings were cancelled, his access to major accounts was restricted, and he was placed under review. The respect he worked years to build disappeared in a matter of hours. Outside of work, things were even worse. Friends who once called him often stopped responding. Some blocked his number completely. The same people who laughed with him at dinners and events suddenly acted like he didn't exist. Nyla also stepped away from him after learning more truth about his financial lies. She realized he had not been honest about money, support, or even his intentions. Whatever trust she still had broke completely once she saw how deeply he had deceived everyone around him. For the first time, Cale was left without anyone standing beside him. Then legal trouble followed. The documents I had gathered with Tallis were strong enough for court action. Once they were reviewed, authorities decided to freeze several of Cale's bank accounts while they investigated the forged signatures and hidden transfers. That move hit him hard because it cut off his financial control instantly. I heard through the lawyer that he tried to explain everything away, but there was too much evidence stacked against him now. Every attempt to defend himself only created more questions. The man who once lived confidently between two separate lives was now stuck in one reality. He couldn't escape. No celebrations, no support, no carefully built image to hide behind. Just silence, consequences, and the weight of everything he had done finally catching up to him. The divorce process wasn't easy. There were long meetings, paperwork, and moments where I had to relive things I wanted to forget. But Talis stayed by my side through it all and made sure I didn't lose what was rightfully mine. In the end, I was able to recover most of the inheritance my mother left me, along with financial stability I thought was gone forever. The house I once shared with Cale no longer felt like a home. Every corner carried memories I didn't want to keep. So I decided to sell it. Letting go of that place felt strange at first, like stepping out of a life I had lived for too long. But it also felt necessary. I moved to a quiet lakefront condo in Michigan. It was smaller, peaceful, and far away from everything tied to my past. The first few nights felt unfamiliar, but not painful. There was no tension in the air, no lies waiting to be uncovered. Just stillness. With time, something inside me started to settle. I no longer woke up expecting bad news or arguments. I could breathe without feeling weighed down. One afternoon, while unpacking boxes, I found my old painting supplies. I hadn't touched them in years. Cale used to call it a waste of time and said I should focus on more practical things. Because of him, I slowly stopped doing something I once loved. But that day, I set everything up again. I didn't think too much. I just started painting. It felt messy at first, like my hands had forgotten the movement. But as I continued, it came back naturally. Hours passed without me noticing. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was doing something just for myself. Bit by bit, I stopped seeing myself as someone who had been broken by a marriage. I started seeing myself again as Bryn, someone who still had her own voice, her own space, and a life that didn't belong to anyone else. 6 months passed quietly. My life finally had a steady rhythm again. I wasn't looking over my shoulder anymore, and the constant stress that once followed me everywhere was gone. I thought that chapter was fully closed until one evening someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, Cale was standing there. He didn't look like the man I once knew. His clothes were wrinkled, his face tired, and his eyes carried a kind of defeat I had never seen in him before. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he started talking. He said everything had fallen apart after the investigation. He lost his job, his savings, and most of the people who once surrounded him. His voice cracked as he admitted he had nowhere left to go. Finally, he asked if there was any chance to fix what we had. I listened without interrupting. No anger came up this time, only distance. When he finished, I reached beside the door and picked up a sealed envelope I had prepared earlier that day. I handed it to him without saying a word. Confused, he opened it. Inside were the final court documents confirming I had full ownership of the last property he once tried to keep hidden during the legal process. The one thing he assumed he could still hold on to was now officially mine. His hands dropped slightly as he read through the papers. There was nothing left for him to argue. I looked at him and spoke calmly. I told him the same words he once used to make me feel small, but this time they carried a different weight. "You're not too old to start over, Cale." He stood there silently, not knowing what to say. I gently closed the door, not out of anger, but because I was done looking back. In that moment, I finally understood that what happened at that dinner didn't destroy me. It pushed me into a life where I could finally choose myself. Do you think I made the right choice by walking away, or should I have given them another chance? I'd really like to know your thoughts in the comments. If you want more stories like this, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.